weather affects everything, from how we feel to how we live. But what's really going on above us? Each week on Atmospheric Insight, we dig deeper into the science of weather and the stories it shapes. This is Atmospheric Insight, where science meets the sky.
That intro gets me every time. Welcome back to another episode of Atmospheric Insight. I'm your host, meteorologist Adam Epstein, joined by meteorologist Riley O'Connor. Riley, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a great week so far. It's my Monday
Yep.
coming back, but it's good to be back in the routine.
All right, that's a weird thing about news. Schedules are never normal, and
Right.
weekends can shift. We work the weekends. I used to do that. You're
Yep.
doing it right now. So your weekend's Monday, Tuesday.
Yep.
Get to go to the bank without any lines.
I love that part.
Get some chores done. Doctor's appointments are never any problems.
Right.
So some perks there. All right. So first thing we're going to talk about today is that we're getting close to the time of the year we change seasons, getting into autumn. So there are a few aspects of this I want to go over, and that's the first part of our show in atmospheric impacts. So let's jump into it. All right, Riley, the first part of this is science,
Yep.
right? We've talked about this before on a previous episode, how there are different definitions of the season, right? Some say, Labor Day, Memorial Day are kind of like unofficial starts, ends to the season. Summer, we have meteorological spring and
Mhm.
summer, fall, winter, all of that.
Mhm.
And now we have astronomical, right? And this is what most people consider to be like the real definition of when our seasons change.
Yep.
So the autumnal equinox, and being astronomical has to do with the angle of the sun's rays hitting the earth. So as of right now, the most direct rays are still on the northern hemisphere. But as the earth spins around the sun and the angles change, eventually they hit the equator, and that's what the equinox is. So
Mhm.
at the equator on September 22nd this year, you'll have exactly 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of nighttime. And then on September 23rd, they shift to the southern hemisphere.
Right.
So while we're going into our colder half of the year, southern hemisphere is going into their warmer half of the
Yeah.
year.
And it's interesting too because even though we're changing seasons, we could still have hot or even hotter days,
Oh yeah.
past, the official start of fall or autumn.
Absolutely. And that happens frequently here in Sacramento. So if you think, hey, it's fall, September 22nd is here, then all of a sudden it's in the hundreds, you're going to get caught off guard.
Right.
It's always a possibility that we have some summer like heat, even when fall starts. So we have our summer solstice was 3 months ago, right?
Mhm.
Now we're going into fall, and eventually, before you know it, it's going to be winter. Remember, in the southern hemisphere, it's going to be summer for them. This is a part of climatology, and this gives us an idea of what happens to temperatures, to precipitation. But of course, things don't always go according to plan, right?
Mhm.
So I want to give everyone an idea of what tends to happen in Sacramento once we get into the fall season. So we have our normal highs, lows, precipitation, and that orange line is the average between the highs and lows. So by the time we get to October, we actually expect the normal high to be in the 70s
Mhm.
and the normal low to be near 50 degrees. It gets a little cooler at night. And I think really the most important part of this is the rain.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
we're trying to get out of fire season, right? That's the
Mhm.
key.
And it was funny because I was saw this graphic and I was showing people different averages, and it was when I questioned, I said, "What stands out to you the most?" Not really, it was the temperatures, but it was the green, the rain. It's like when
Mhm.
it starts getting wetter, and I think a lot of people do focus on that part of it.
Yeah, this is something that impacts everyone's lives,
Hmm.
right? Whether it's just for recreation, getting outside, whether they work on a farm, whether
Hmm.
they just work outdoors.
Hmm.
When it starts to rain, other parts of the country don't really consider this being an issue
Right,
because it rains year round, but
right,
not here. We have a specific dry season, and winter is our wet season.
right.
So we hope to get consistent rainfall. It doesn't always happen in October. Sometimes it's November, sometimes it's December, and we talked about this in a previous episode too. Sometimes it just doesn't happen,
Yep.
and it's fire season year round.
Right.
And I'm sure there are a lot of people that are also looking forward to fall-like temperatures.
Hmm.
So November, the average high drops down to 65, and then we're getting to winter in December,
Hmm.
56 for an average high. So Riley, what do you prefer? You into the heat or you like the cold?
I like the heat.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I mean, occasional cooler days are fun, but I definitely love the warm weather.
Yeah, I definitely do prefer warmth to
Hmm.
cold. But now living in Sacramento for 7 years, I do appreciate
Yeah.
the cold a little bit more than
Right.
I used to when I was growing up in New York. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about is daylight saving time, right? So this is something that we have talked about as a
Mhm.
country many times. Everyone dinner table has this talk, like, don't forget to turn the clocks back. We're jumping forward. We're all sick of it. We don't want to do it anymore, right? Like,
Yep.
are you tired of changing the clocks back and forth?
I am, yes. I
Uh,
wish it would just stay the same.
Okay, so next question is, which version do you want to stay? Is it standard time or is it daylight saving time? What do you prefer?
I like standard time.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So standard time for everyone, I know this can be confusing, would mean that it stays a little bit brighter in the mornings and then it gets darker later in the day.
Hmm.
So we changed to daylight saving time so that we could get brighter conditions towards the end of the day.
Yep.
And the graphic right in between us shows us what summer is right now in daylight saving time, what winter is right now, and then what winter would be if daylight saving time stayed year round. So the latest sunrise we would get if we kept daylight saving time is 8:23, and I recognize like that
Hmm.
is pretty late in the morning.
Hmm.
And you have kids going to school, right, Riley? So
Yep.
probably prefer if it was brighter in the morning. Does that
Right.
factor into why you prefer standard time?
Yes, because the reason why, that's the thing. You don't want your kids going to school when it's dark. It's
Yes,
hard.
I get that.
It is hard.
I get that. But if this is the positive, right? This is
Hmm.
what I like.
Hmm.
If we kept daylight saving time year round, the earliest sunset we would have in the winter is 5:44
Yeah.
instead of
Right.
4:44,
Right.
right? So I I I am a proponent of keeping the light on
Yeah.
later in the
Later.
day as opposed to early in the morning,
Uh-huh.
but that's personally what works for me.
Mhm.
Anyone who has kids, I totally get where you're coming from, and it
It,
makes sense.
it is hard too, though, if you think about it both ways, because when we change the clocks, I mean, it's going to get darker earlier, right?
Yeah.
So kids get out of school, say, I don't know, 2:30, 3 o'clock, somewhere in there. You really only have maybe an hour and a half to be outside and play or do things
Yeah.
until it gets dark. So it depends on your preference, but um, it's easier to get them to bed.
I hear that too. So for parents, I guess generally, yeah, standard time instead of say daylight saving time makes sense. But I think we can all agree, whether you want one or the other, is that we want to stop changing,
Yes.
right? We want to stop changing. All right, let's get into our next segment. It's time for Ask Adam. Check this one out.
Welcome to another installment of Ask Adam. This week's question comes from Kim Walsh, and Kim asked, why do cold fronts generally bring more severe weather than warm fronts? And this question is a great one because it shows me that Kim already knows what she's talking about, and she pays attention to the forecast and likes meteorology. First thing I want to discuss in order to answer this question is exactly what a front is. It's the leading edge of an air mass, and these are the air masses that we have across the United States. M or C stands for maritime or continental, and that defines whether the air mass originates over the water, maritime, or over land, that's continental. Then you have Arctic, polar, or tropical. That depends on the latitude. Arctic farther to the north, tropical farther down to the south near the equator. These air masses are always in flux and they move, and that leading edge of an air mass are the fronts that we are going to focus on. And there's one part in the United States where you have three air masses that continuously tend to run into each other, and it's no coincidence, that is Tornado Alley. Remember, where air masses collide, that's where you have inclement weather. Not many locations all around the planet that have three air masses that come together like this, so Tornado Alley is a special one, not just in the United States, but all across the globe. It is infamous. Let's go into warm fronts. You have a wedge of cold air. That advancing warm air hits the cold air already in place, and it's forced upwards because warm air is less dense than cold air. As that air rises, it cools, condenses, forms clouds, and eventually the warm air cools down enough to where clouds and precipitation can't form. We call this part of the atmosphere a stable atmosphere. And I want you to notice the slope of this. It's not very steep, it's gradual, and you have spread out clouds over a wide distance. Now, contrast this with a cold front. Now all of a sudden you have warm air in place, the cold front comes marching in and it forces that warm air up. It gets pried upward very quickly, and that quick displacement creates fast rising air that cools down, moisture condenses into clouds in the same process, but cumulonimbus can form, and that's the key difference. Cumulonimbus clouds are those thunderstorm clouds, and that's why you have more severe weather with cold fronts. Compare this slope, which is more straight up, it's more vertical, and that rising air, that convection, is what you need to create thunderstorms and severe weather. So while it's true that cold fronts do produce more severe weather than warm fronts can make it happen in certain situations as well. Great question. Thank you so much, Kim. I hope you always continue to ask questions and stay curious.
And Riley, I truly mean it. That was an excellent question because one of the things in news that a consultant once told me is ask your anchor if they know what high or low pressure is, and they won't. And I didn't believe them, so I asked, and sure enough,
Right.
no answer. So when someone asks about cold fronts or warm fronts, which are so integral that you talk about and you see in all these forecasts, I want people to know what I'm talking about and understand these processes.
Right. And it's good to have this type of, show that we're doing now because we can kind of dive in and talk about it more because
Yeah.
when we're giving our forecast, we only have anywhere from about 2.5 minutes to give everything. So it's kind of hard to dive in sometimes.
Exactly. So this is a great space for us to let this breathe, get into the science. And we have an interesting segment from you coming up next. We talk to someone who got married during one of the worst fire seasons in California's history. So we'll be right back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Atmospheric Insight. I'm meteorologist Adam Epstein. Meteorologist Riley O'Connor is joining me. So, Riley, one of the things you wanted to focus on in this space is talking about how weather events affect people's life events in big ways.
Right, exactly. From snowstorms and to fires or even rain, the weather affects us in our everyday life. And that's one of the things that I focus on with this. So this next segment talks about how someone was married during the 2018 fire or summer fires.
Right. All right. Let's see what she has to say.
Well, as we know, summertime can bring a variety of weather phenomenon here in California, but one thing in particular is fires. We know fire season is a really big deal in the summer season. And I want to go back to 2018 because that year was a tremendous year with fires. We had 1.8 million acres burned. We had the Camp Fire, which was one of the deadliest fires that occurred in November. And then we also had the Carr Fire and the Mendocino Complex Fire. So that year was really particular, a very devastating year for the state. However, people live on with their lives, right? The weather impacts people on a daily basis. And today I'm meeting with Dana. Now Dana works for Fox 40 as well. And she wants to talk about something in particular that happened during the summer months of 2018 that affected her life, but also really when the fires were hitting. Dana, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice meeting you. Yeah, so 2018 is when I got married, so 7 years ago. And we did a very small backyard wedding. And so we just invited, just the main family members that we wanted to have. But I have a lot of family in both Oregon and Arizona that I had come out for the wedding, and they were staying with us. And so when the fires were happening, I was a little worried because it was really smoky. And I've grown up here my whole life. Fires weren't really a thing. And so it was very, very scary, to have just this dark cloud over everything. And then not knowing that it was going to happen when I was going to get married. And so there were white tablecloths. And I remember waking up the day of and going out to check on everything, and there was a layer of ash on all of the white tablecloths, and I kind of panicked for a moment because you put so much energy into doing everything. Thankfully, the ash came off really fast, really easy. It didn't cause any staining or anything. And then for the actual ceremony, it cleared up. And then the only other thing I was really worried about is I had a couple family members that were, they had some health issues, and it was smoky towards the end of the night, and a lot of people left early because of the smoke.
Take me back a second on the feelings when you woke up that morning and saw the ash. Were you hopeful? And take me through the process of even looking up at the sky with the fires. I mean, was it scary?
Yeah, it was definitely a little scary. It was one of those things where I wanted it. Everybody wants their wedding day to go off without a hitch, right? And you have this moment of panic where you feel like maybe that's not going to happen, right? So there is a little bit of fear mixed into it. And just having to pivot very quickly and change things.
Looking back after you got married and thinking about, the history of the fires, and that year in particular was just a catastrophic wildfire season. Do you realize what it was like to have your wedding during that year when those 3 fires were so major and caused so much destruction, even death in the state?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting dichotomy, honestly, to have something so joyous, such a nice celebration, when in reverse, there's people who are suffering. There's definitely like a lot of, I think, feelings about that, and I think we were very fortunate that here in Sacramento we were kind of isolated from the actual fires themselves, and we were able to still have our wedding, instead of people who have dealt with houses burning down and losing lives. It's definitely like a very different perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it makes you grateful for what you do have and what you were able to do, and what and being able to come together with people and family during such a time.
The weather impacts people every day in every way, right? You can't stop your life, worried about the weather, because we know these moments will happen. But what were the joyful moments that came out of this?
I remember very vividly because we had put up a pergola in our backyard, and we put misters out, and it was hot also. It's August when we got married. And so it was really hot, and we had the misters on, but we had our first dance under the pergola, and there's just this really cool picture of us just really having like a great time dancing, and just having so many people, because I have a large family, and having them come out from different states to be with us, and during some of the side effects of the fires, to be here and be with us. I think that's like a particular moment of joy for me as well.
Right. Well, thank you, Dana, so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for joining us here on Atmospheric Insight. We'll be back with you next week with more memories and more stories about how the atmosphere and the weather will impact everyone and you every day.
That was such a fun segment to do, to talk with somebody about how, you have these moments in life when you can't control the weather. And we know that fires are devastating, and what happens with them and how they affect people's lives. But there's also joyous moments that come out of this
Yeah.
too. And it goes to show too, no matter whether you're planning something outside or not, you always have to think of the weather. Will it be hot? Will there be fires? Will there be rain? But you always get past it, and you find the joy in every day. And the weather brings me joy talking about it. So I really enjoyed this segment.
And I think Dana hit the nail on the head when she said it was such a dichotomy, right? You have
Absolutely.
such a joyous
Yep.
occasion, but something else is going on that can be devastating.
Yep.
And you mentioned you have to just go on. You
Yep.
live your life, and weather is just a part of it. And weather makes things memorable, right?
Right.
I think everyone at home is watching, everyone has a memory of
Hmm.
a time where weather changed their day, maybe
Hmm.
changed their life,
Yeah.
right? And just had an impact on them.
Right.
Riley, thank you very much for that segment. I'm looking forward to hearing more about like these personal stories
Yeah.
and how they shape us and the people that we work with at the station and
Yeah.
everyone else around. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much. All right, coming up, we're going back to the National Weather Service in Sacramento to the office to show you that it's just not weather that's there. Genevieve Melser is going to give us a closer look. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
All right, welcome back to Atmospheric Insight. Right now, we're gonna look at Genevieve's package about talking with the National Weather Service. We had a segment last week with this, and this is
Yep.
continuation of it too. So interested to see what she has to say.
Right, there's a lot that goes on there that a lot of people don't realize. Let's take a
We're
look.
back at the National Weather Service because not only do they have their office in here, but so does the California River Forecast Center. Let's go find out what they do.
This is the operational area for the California Nevada River Forecast Center. So we're one of 13 river forecast centers in the United States. We cover all of California and Nevada river forecasting locations in those 2 states. In this operational area, we have it kind of divided up in 2 sections. People over here are meteorologists, and so what they do is they work on the meteorological forecast information that goes into the models we use to predict how high rivers are going to get for flooding. And so over here is our area where we do our hydrologic forecasting, which I was just mentioning. So all the meteorological information gets processed through hydrologic models, and that's where we come up with stream flow forecasts, how high rivers are going to be getting. So every day, the meteorologists will be issuing a precipitation forecast, temperature forecast, all the information that we need to process through the hydrologic models that come up with the runoff that will get into the rivers and project how high the rivers are going to get. So in a nutshell, we issue forecasts at least twice a day during the rainy season in California.
The California and Nevada River Forecast Center and the National Weather Service work together with other agencies under one roof.
So this is part of the State Federal Flood Operations Center. So it's California Department of Resources and NOAA, us, National Weather Service. So during big flood events, much like the State Operations Center at Cal OES activates, they activate here and there. This is kind of the main room where one of the sections sits, but they have kind of rooms all over the building when they're activated to provide weather information for the whole state, along with the CNRFC.
When dealing with severe weather in our area, how do you decide to issue a watch versus a warning?
So our watches and warnings, our watch is kind of the heads up that something's coming, but it's not necessarily in the next day or so. So sometimes for heat or longer foreseeable things that can be, 3, 4, 5 days in advance, that's something's coming, get ready. And then your warning is your take action stage. So that weather hazard is imminent or occurring. And if you don't take those protective actions, there likely will be some damages or some impacts. For each weather hazard, we have set local criteria that we issue those products for. So we have products for severe thunderstorms, for winter weather, for heat, and all those criteria are set locally to match the local climatology.
After severe weather events happen that impact the community, do you go out and survey the damage?
When we have reports of damage to a concentrated area, we've had weather going on, we usually go out and do an official damage survey. So we typically coordinate with local emergency management to gather the damage reports, and then we go out and actually get out in the field and look at what happened. So for instance, in Carmichael, we had lots of reports of trees down, power lines down. We go out and it's kind of forensic meteorology. We're like looking at which way the damage is facing. In the case yesterday, all the damage was pushed in one direction, so we knew it wasn't a tornado. There are certain things we look for to determine whether it's just wind damage or it's a tornado. For all intents and purposes, right, damage is damage, and it's usually caused by wind, but we go out and try to figure out what happened.
Do you ever feel pressure knowing your forecast can affect people's safety?
I would say yes, right? We all feel kind of the weight of that job, and our mission is to protect life and property. So I think a lot of us got into this public service role because we want to help out people. We want to help out the communities that we live in. And so I would say, yes, it's a pressure that's always there, but it's a job we take very seriously.
And a huge thanks to the National Weather Service Sacramento team for letting us peek behind the curtain.
That was Genevieve Melzer with another great behind the scenes look at the National Weather Service in Sacramento. And something interesting about this, Riley, is that not every office has hydrology in the
Right.
same department on that floor.
Mhm.
So they are able to work together cohesively
Mhm.
and make the right products
Mhm.
and talk to each other, walk across the hall. I think that's really helpful for a place like Sacramento.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about it too, because if you're not familiar with this and you're watching this for the first time, maybe it's this is where we get our forecast from,
Yeah.
and they give us the knowledge that we as forecasters on TV look at too. And so it's really helpful, and the insight that they're in the same building talking back and forth and to have that close knit relationship to make those forecasts more accurate for people.
Yeah, they produce a lot of great products, right?
Mhm.
So what we rely on them for are watches and warnings,
Mhm.
right? As broadcast meteorologists, we can make our own forecasts,
Yep.
but we don't issue our own watches and warnings. We're relaying that information to you. And you asked Genevieve, or you heard Genevieve ask if you feel the weight of that responsibility
Mhm.
to help people. And that's kind of why we all got into this. One, we love weather.
Mhm.
Two, we want to help people. At the end of the day, we're public servants, and we want to give you the information that can provide knowledge for yourself
Mhm.
to make the right decisions to go about your day, your week, and stay safe.
Right.
All right. That was another episode of Atmospheric Insight. Riley, it's always a pleasure to work with you. We'll see you next week. Until then, enjoy.